Hello, hello. I'm Avalon, and this is Voice Notes from the Chrysalis, my 21 episode podcast where I share all the golden nuggets that I've discovered from being completely transformed over the course of 5 years in celebration of the launch of my digital course, Discover Yourself. Thanks so much for being here. And today we're talking about not putting ourselves in boxes, how it is so important to understand who we are, our identity, everything that makes us who we are. And at the same time, don't let that hold ourselves back. So I feel like this comes almost without saying when we're talking about like going through deep transformations and evolving, but inherently to evolving and being transformed, dying and being reborn, we can't hold on too tightly to our identity. Like that process is a becoming. And I'll speak from my experience. There are absolutely stories that I have told myself about myself that have held me back. There are boxes I have put myself in that were not accurate and were not helpful. So, the example that I have is I mentioned that I grew up really creative and artistic, and that somehow also translated into I'm not smart was the story that I had in my head from other people. And I think this came across because I didn't do well in like math classes, specifically. Uh, I, to be honest, blame my teachers because I didn't feel like I really started to understand math until I was in college and I had really good professors, to be just honest. But this kind of messaging got internalized within me and translated to me believing without realizing it that I'm not smart. That I'll put myself in the box of being the artist, the creative, the innovator, maybe, the imagination person, the idea generator, which I'm actually not the best idea generator, in my opinion. That is not my strongest strength. But I put myself in that box. And the problem with that is that that is other people. That is other people telling me who I am. And that box wasn't accurate. Some of it was. I am artistic, I am creative, but I'm actually not the best idea generator, and I am very smart. So this became apparent. And also, I think not just being called a creative contributed to me telling that story about myself, but also I didn't learn how to read until I was in third grade. I think this happened because I moved schools from like during first grade, and I guess that's when I went from a North Carolina school to a Virginia school, and I guess that's first grade is when they start teaching you how to read, and I missed it, and I just faked it really well until, at least in Virginia, we start doing standardized testing in third grade, and we were going around the room all to all of my different classmates and reading aloud the SOL questions, the test questions, practice questions. Um, and I couldn't tell anyone what the question said, let alone what the answer was, because I couldn't read. So got put into remedial education, learned how to read real quick, so that I could take the SOL, and I passed good enough. Um, and then I became a bookworm. Yeah, I like very much realized like, oh, I can escape my reality by going into the world of fantasy and other books and other stories and other realities. So that contributed, I think, to not being smart, the belief of not being smart. And then also, I had a really hard time in college. I originally signed up as a double major that was not compatible, where I was a nutrition major as pre-med, and nutrition was in one college and pre-med was in another college, and that meant that the majors did not share many classes. So I had like a double course load and I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but I was like, if I'm going to be a doctor, I want to actually like understand nutrition, because doctors don't get a lot of training on that. So I was like, okay, well, I want to have an undergrad in nutrition and go on and be a DO, a doctor. But I found out that I could not take four science classes at the same time and get all A's the way you need to when you're pre-med. I found that out the hard way, and yeah, my GPA was not great. I love science. I love some sciences. Physics makes me cry. Traumatizing. But I had a really hard time. In every single semester, at the beginning and at the end, I would have an existential crisis and I would literally be crying my eyes out at some point, questioning what I was doing and if I could do it, if I could graduate, and like why it was like really just making my life hard for me. It is what it felt like. It got a lot easier when I switched majors, when I realized like, okay, we can't be, we're not meant to be a doctor. And thank God, because after working with doctors, I don't want to be one. They're great, great. I just don't want to do that for work. Um, and I switched majors to community health education, and instantly all A's, maybe one B, so much more in line with like my strengths, honestly, and like things I wanted to learn about and intrinsic motivation. And yeah, it was great. But because of those first 2 years being on that one track and not wanting to retake those classes, if at all possible, or retake other classes to boost my GPA, because once you start to slide down, it's a really hard math problem to get back on top GPA wise. So I literally graduated with my undergrad with the lowest GPA that they would let my major graduate with. I think they had to round me up. Like literally, it was the literal lowest GPA that they would let someone graduate with. Um, so I think that contributed to the story as well. But then I got my MBA. And I held off for 4 years, thinking about getting an MBA or maybe something else, but like MBA was just calling my name, probably because my stepdad, who was again very influential on my life, had an MBA. It's also like super versatile master's degree. But yeah, and thank God, because I don't know that I would be here if I didn't have it. But I thought about it for 4 years. And I was really concerned about even being able to complete it. Understandably, after my undergrad experience, but this was an all online program. I was now like an adult who had worked multiple years, like remotely working from home. Like, this is just a totally different, I was in a very different place in my life, but at the same time, I was like, I don't know if I'm smart enough to complete this degree. And girl, not only was I smart enough to complete this degree, normally it takes 2 years, I completed it in 6 months. So can you imagine the wake-up call I had to that story of I'm not smart? Because I like was immediately confronted. I think it was my first or second course I was in. Um, I think yeah, first or second course of the MBA. And luckily, I had an incredible mentor for my program. So, oh my God, God bless Marianne. Thank you. Changed my life. Yeah, I like got to a point where I was pissed off at myself. I was pissed off at everyone else in my life who I had looked up to as a mentor or a guide because what the fuck? I am smart. Why did no one tell me that I'm smart? Why did no one tell me that I'm strategic? Why did no one tell me that I have a lot of good leadership qualities? Why did no one tell me about this? Like, this is when I encountered that strengths and weaknesses exercise that is in my course, Discover Yourself, that I have made my own. But I had to pay thousands of dollars to have that experience. You don't have to. You get to pay a small, small fee to much smaller compared to that to experience those exercises and have that empowerment and destroy the stories that we have told ourselves about ourselves that aren't true. So I would highly recommend Discover Yourself. You can sign up and be an early bird and get it at a discount. It comes out on December 21st, and for the public, it comes out on December 28th, 2025. But yeah, I think it is so critical when we are going through major transformation, death, and rebirth to be very loose with how we perceive ourselves, how we describe ourselves, how we identify. This is only one example. There are so many ways that I have misidentified myself. Um, and it really is such a process of unraveling the conditioning, the assumptions of other people, the labels that other people give us, probably well-intentioned or unintentionally. Um, but it's our work that we have to do, and it's extremely powerful to be confronted with unequivocal knowledge that, wow, this story I've been telling myself pretty much my whole life is like factually wrong. I don't like, if I can get an MBA in 6 months, I am smart. Like, it was just such powerful proof of dispelling that story. And yeah, I just would highly encourage you to be curious about yourself. And when you find yourself being really attached to a certain aspect of who you think you are, yeah, if you're clinging to something specific, then I would question that and question if it's true. So, thank you so much for being here. My light just turned off, so that is time to sign off. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.